So we're going to go over the exact places and reasons to get into oil right now and the exact prices to do so with the least amount of risk. We're one of the few channels that have covered this before the war, but also during the war and being extremely accurate in terms of our predictions on where the price would go to 150, 160 before the war, and then the manipulation during the war once we realized those events were taking place. Some of the highlight points we're going to cover are inflation, sort of oil reserves, now being depleted, but now being need to bought up. The fact that those reserves are gone means that any squeeze now is not going to have the support and manipulation that the previous run had. China stockpiling, obviously we'll touch on the Iran war, but also specific trading points in the intraday trading that Craig does. But also $84 and $67, based on a couple of reasons we'll go over, are looking like good breakout points, but also bottom points. So without further ado, Craig, maybe we'll go back to the first point. You've banged on about inflation for the longest period of time, especially before the war. What have you been seeing now?
Well, oil is still one of the cheapest commodities out there, particularly when you price it in other commodities like gold, for example. It's almost at an all-time low if you price oil in gold. So oil is very cheap, and considering how necessary it is to the global economy and all the issues that we see now with Hormuz being closed again and the ongoing war in the Middle East, then you have to say this is something that everyone should have a stake in going forward. So we're looking at the technical levels as well as the fundamentals, and the technical levels, as you see on the chart just now. There is a chance that this comes back and does a double bottom at around about 67, but that's certainly not guaranteed.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say if you want an ultra safe entry point, you're looking at 84, which is the previous April low.
Mm.
So you want to get in there. There's also a gap around about
Yeah.
82.50 to be filled. So take out that gap, get above 84, and then I think we're off to the races. I still see oil reaching 150, 200 in the next
Yeah,
12
exactly.
months.
Yeah, exactly. Where we've, got to in the past, it's going to break out all-time highs as it always does. Oil's a history of hitting all-time highs. It's a commodity, so
It's going to take out that 2008 high, and when it does, then watch out. It's going much higher.
yeah, yeah, the panic will set in. And I think the crucial point about this time is that the manipulation and the reserves. I mean, we called all of this. I mean, you can see when we bought in before. I know you were buying before. I was waiting for us to get above the 50 moving average here, and we did get above there. I had a much bigger position, took some profits in this zone, and then now we retraced. My thought process here was I was a little bit too excited, and when it hit the 200, it started to bounce. So I got in before our rule of it breaking the nine moving average and getting above it. So we hit the nine moving average and got it rejected. But you can see how these rules are very good to obey because even as it then curled here, bounced down off of it, and then squeezed, got above it, and then I entered some more. But I didn't even enter that heavily because, as you mentioned a few moments ago, kind of looking for a kind of retracement and then a curl up again would have been a good opportunity to do an even bigger position. But equally, if we get above 84, then you've got to respect the fact that all of these things we talked about and all the things I listed at the beginning of the video, they're going to be even more exaggerated than previously. Obviously, you've got
And this price for short-term trading, we all have to be aware that there is a lot of manipulation going on in the oil futures market. I
yeah,
mean, the Treasury Secretary has openly admitted that the U.S. government is manipulating the oil price to try and keep it down, and they're doing
yeah,
that one by financial manipulation, and secondly by dipping into the what they call the U.S. Strategic Oil Reserve, which they've apparently only has a few weeks of oil left in that reserve,
well,
so that has been already been used. And thirdly, by Trump's Truth Social posts, where he says
yes,
the war's on, the war's off, and I'm sure that people close to him are trading every time they does one of these posts. So I'm surprised the market still pays attention to them
yeah,
because it's just crazy that people are acting on these
yeah,
posts. And I saw something today that Truth Social are actually selling institutions access to Trump's posts before anybody else. So you can pay, I don't know what the fee is, but you can pay to get advance
No way.
notice of Trump's Truth Social posts so that you can trade on it, which is
No
it's
way.
insane. I mean, it's this guy's making a profit out of the presidency to a level that's never been seen before. I don't know if you noticed, was it last week or the week before that he declared how much he'd earned in the last
Yeah.
year, and they made like almost $2 billion from basically these cryptocurrencies and so on.
Yeah, I'd seen that, and I'd also seen how he was trying to defend his children, being like, "Oh, but whatever they invest in, obviously I've done an order or whatever, and they kind of are going to be investing alongside my executive order, and it's kind of just a given."
But keep
But
in mind
it,
that's only what he disclosed. I'm
yeah,
sure there's many other entities and trusts and so on that there's no obligation to disclose, and all the other people that are close to him, like Howard Lutnick and so on,
yeah,
that families who are trading things as well. So the amount of money that's been made by insiders in the U.S. administration
mm,
is just off the charts.
yeah. I
So
mean,
again, back to the subject. That's why you have to be somewhat careful in short-term trading in oil, but the long term
exactly.
is going to go exactly where we think it's going to go. I mean, I don't see it not getting there, but I mean, just to go back to reiterate the point, if we see it coming back down to the 67 level, a double bottom of that level, that's a good entry point to get in there, but wait until it turns up again, obviously.
Yeah.
And this 84 level, which is taking out the April low, those are two key levels to watch
Yeah.
in this market if you want to trade it.
Absolutely. And I think it's true. I mean, we said that way before well, during the manipulation, but as we were rising here before we'd even had a red day, you touched on the plunge protection team, which is normally, main market indices, but obviously when oil becomes one of the hottest things, they move across to other things and stop those things from getting out of control in their opinion. But actually, if it might work short term, but if the situation doesn't correct and inflation isn't controlled and the war in Iran was just manipulated and there was no real intention with the MOUs to actually do anything other than just to feel them out. I mean, we can see how it's just crazy how these institutions and maybe the people seeing those true social posts before they come out, dumping every single time. And then even here, I think we had another sort of peace deal. And then, clearly, and then when we clearly weren't going to have a peace deal, and then escalations started to come. It took ages. It's funny how the piece that it works almost opposite to how the indices normally work. Normally, fear is instant and drops fast, and bullish things take time for people to get into. But then once it starts to go, FOMO is big, and things rise quickly. But in this instance, it looks like FOMO was slow. I wish it was here because I think the piece was around this area. No peace deal and escalations were all during this still continuous drop. And then only then did the price, once you get confirmation of price, did we start to rise. But when they were talking about a deal which was so weak and could they have been speaking to just Iranian farmers? I have no idea. And then they keep criticizing each different group of people they speak to, and you've got fringe groups that are going to want the war to continue rather than the so-called leaders that they're speaking to. So yeah, I mean that's just more on the war there. And actually, there's some interesting points about how some of these Asian countries that are reliant on Hormuz to 60-80%, they're going to now diversify all their routes. They're going to be stockpiling, and that stockpiling is going to create an absolute bottom and a floor of how low the price can go. Because if the Asian countries that are being totally burned by the West, so to speak, they're going to be stockpiling. They're going to looking for the best opportunity to stockpile. And knowing that this price is about to skyrocket, they should have been doing so down here. But now they're probably, that's just another thing that will fuel a squeeze beyond the all-time highs that we were already predicting before the crisis. So you can only imagine
Yes.
the level up that would create on the
Well,
squeeze going beyond
well,
that all-time highs. So yeah.
yeah, one of the reasons that the last leg up didn't go much higher was that China, during the Hormuz crisis, stopped importing oil, and they obviously they're using their own reserves and their own supplies, and they stopped importing oil from the Middle East more or less. So that was one of the reasons why that price didn't go higher on the last leg up. But that's a short-term move. If they've used
Yeah.
their own strategic reserves, that's not going to be able to happen again either. So the longer this goes on, the more chance this is really gonna surge. And as
Exactly.
I say, we were talking about this long before the Iran war. we would talk about this when when oil was floating around at 50 $55,
Yeah,
saying it's the most underpriced commodity out there, and
yeah,
that hasn't changed. It doesn't wars and so on and market manipulation can move things in the short term in either direction, but over the long term, this commodity is the cheapest thing out there, and given that it's absolutely essential to the global economy,
yeah.
you've got to have a position in this.
Yeah, exactly. And why would you not? I mean, it's just one of the many commodities to buy and diversify your assets over. And absolutely, there's no this time round, you've got the no one's gonna no everyone knows that there's no backup this time. I mean, we saw petrol prices go high. I think this is gonna be bad for fuel and energy in general. There's no backup and security now, and also no one's going to believe these sorts of peace deals to try and manipulate the price down as much as they were in here, even though all these people, in my opinion, were so irrational. We are going to get above that level. And then on top of that, I think the escalation in the conflict is almost to a point of no return, especially if we end up getting boots on the ground. And we've touched on interesting religious motivations behind some of these things from an Israeli point of view, but also from an Iran point of view. They do want they want to summon their Madri or whatever, and so they're going to be wanting to actually have a conflict that, in their view, would bring about the end times. So if that's a scary note to finish on, that is a scary note to finish on.
Interesting perspective. I hadn't had that one, but interesting.
I think the benefit of that is helping understand the motivation behind why so many people can be irrational on both fronts in terms of one, Trump trying to be clever and manipulate prices with fake MOUs and peace deals, knowing full well Iran aren't going to honor them, and then understanding why Iran might not honor anything they do, but also what sort of their
Yeah,
motivations.
anything that involves politics and leaders of countries and politicians in any way in any country is going to be irrational. That is just take that one to the bank. Obviously, it's there's no logic in any of these things to rational people.
Yeah, exactly. And thankfully, those things can only really manipulate things short term. The view and the fundamentals are going to be the things that eventually move things, and that's what we're seeing now. I think we're going to see that move. But just to go over the technicals and some of the stuff on screen here for people who haven't seen our channel before, we like to have a 200, which is the green line, and a 50 and a 9, and you can see how once you start to trade below those levels, but then you start to trade above, and then it flips, and then we can get aggressive moves. Even when we were coming down off of the manipulation, still these technical levels like the 250 here were respected and bounced off of a few times, but then as we fell below it, started to bounce off the underside of it. I did try and then, buy a bit too soon on that 200, and maybe I should have waited for the 9 to break. But once it did over here, you can see now we're getting back above the 200. We are at that 50 as potential resistance, but I think we've seen that resistance, and now we might be creating a small bull flag to go higher. And I think that's why we're saying that maybe 83 is the last resistance. As we get to 84, like you said, we're off to the races. But yeah, that's a reason why maybe we could see a curl back from here, and then another, if we get down towards 67 and then a couple of more green days and a curl up, that'd be it. But like we said, I think there's absolutely no guarantee of that. I think now's as good a time as any, as the title of this video, to buy. We're on that 200 level, and the fundamentals are screaming for this to be near maybe even a decade bottom. I don't know how you would how your sort of long-term view is, and but the good thing is almost certainly those all-time highs are going to be broken, so a lot of money to be made. But if that's the case, I think this could be nearly a decade long or half decade long low for oil. So yeah, it could be
Sure.
interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely.